To Arlington, you know how awesome it is. For those of you that haven't been, basically we go and for a week we put on different, almost like Sidewalk Sunday School, VBS, and we do it at different apartment complexes. Trust me when I say it is such an amazing trip. You get to meet so many amazing kids and watch them grow closer to God. I'm telling you, you will walk away impacted, and you will walk away stronger in your faith and in your walk with God. The other thing is camp. We did Camp Live last week. Camp is awesome. We're going to have tons of fun games, some great speakers. So if you're interested in doing youth camp, there are some of these cards back there by where that clock is. And so on the back of them, on the green side, there's a QR code. So if you want to sign up to go to camp, make sure that you do that. It's a $50 deposit for camp and for Arlington to save your spots. Trust me when I say you're going to want to do that because spots fill up quick. So you can do the card, you can go on the website, you can go on the app. It's all there. Well, with the announcements out of the way, let's get into the message. For those of you that don't know, my name is Mitch. I actually used to be an intern here, but by the grace of God, I got to come back. I'm no longer an intern. I'm the associate youth pastor here. And let me just tell you, it feels so good to be back. It is amazing. I will say there is a part of it that's kind of weird because I've only been gone for about a year. But I've gone through so much. I've changed so much. I feel like a different person. Y'all got new restaurants and coffee shops popping up all over, things that weren't here. Y'all got a Chili's and a Panda now. Now we got Chick-fil-A. It's awesome, but it's all different. It's weird. I come back and things just aren't the same. But there are some things that are the same, and that helps me. For example, Pastor Riley still misplaces everything. That has not changed at all. Y'all, I've been here for a month. And so far, I've found his wallet in a van 4 days after he drove the van. I've found his keys everywhere. I found Dawn's keys when she trusts him with her keys. Not a smart decision. Find those too. I found his phone. And lots of just random stuff that we need when we're working day to day. So it gives me some comfort knowing that hasn't changed. No, I'm not going to tell him everything I found. There's some stuff that, that's between us. But another thing that hasn't changed is Aubrey Jackson and Luciana still talk the entire time during Sunday schools. That has not changed. And I'm giving y'all some grief. One, because it's true, but also because you sit at the front of Sunday school, so it's easy to mess with y'all. But literally, the entire time I'm up there doing my sermon or my little devo, I'm kind of looking over it because it keeps distracting me because they're just talking all the time. Another thing that hasn't changed is Harlan is still gullible. Harlan is so gullible. He's back there, he's getting red in the face because he knows it's true. Let me give you a quick story before I get into the message. I came here on a Saturday. And Pastor Riley was wanting me to hide out because he wanted to make a big surprise. So I was in that house Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Nobody knew I was here. Then, Tuesday night, Pastor Riley asked me to come help with the boy band practice. So I walk up, and Harlan walks in. He's like, "Hey, what are you doing here?" I had to think fast, had to think on my toes. It was a little stressful, but I just looked at him and I go, "Just here for a couple days. No big deal." And then Harlan immediately questioned me, "Are you coming back? Are you going to be you're going to be an intern again, right? You're going to be an intern?" And I walked up to Harlan and I said, "Bud, I'm not coming back as an intern." Let it be known, I never lied to Harlan. I never did, but I told him I'm not coming back as an intern. Then he gets the bright idea, "You should come back as an associate youth pastor." Once again, I had to think on my toes. And I looked at Harlan and I said, "Well, the whole point of the internship program is so that way we don't have to have an associate youth pastor." So after about 5 minutes of talking to Harlan, that dude was off the trail. He had no clue. He had no idea. He's going to tell you that he knew. He didn't. You can ask Pastor Riley. Pastor Riley was there. That dude had no clue. And of course, the next night I get announced and Harlan comes up to me after and is like, "Yeah, I knew last night when you came by." I was like, "No, you didn't." So Harlan is still gullible. Don't use that against him, but he will believe just about anything you tell him. But in all seriousness, you guys have no idea how happy I am to be back. I'm so excited to see what God is going to do through your lives. I'm so grateful that I get to be a part of the journey, that I get to watch you grow into the young men and women that God has destined you to be. And I'm just so pumped for it. So with all that being said, I want you to turn to your neighbor and say, get your weight up. That was weak. Turn to the other neighbor and say, get your weight up. Come on. Y'all got to say it with your chest. Come on, say it one more time. Get your weight up. Good. Good, 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 good. Hey, so here's the deal. Typically, when you hear that phrase, get your weight up, that means that the person that you're going against isn't strong enough. They're not big enough. They can't handle you. In football, you hear a lot of times guys will smoke another player, or they'll stiff arm them or pancake them or whatever, and they'll get up and they'll start yelling at each other, and the guy that's strong will be, get your weight up. He's saying, you can't hang with me. You're not good enough. You're not strong enough. Just, no, don't even try. But tonight, I want to offer a different perspective. Instead of talking about weight as in strength or weight, I want to talk about weight as in W-A-I-T. It's a different perspective, and it's going to be a little different. So, ever since I've been back, I've had lots of people coming up to me saying, Mitch, it's so good to have you back. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. How are things going? And I love it. But the one phrase I hear from everyone is, it's so good to have you back home. I don't know if y'all know this or not. I'm not from here. Technically, this isn't my home. When I think of home, I think of my house back in Sand Springs. For many of you, when you hear home, you think of the house that you grew up in. Now, don't get me wrong, this place has definitely become a home, and I've loved getting to adapt to this town, but when I think of home, I think of my house. I think of my bedroom and all the different themes I've had growing up. I think of the living room where I've watched movies and had game nights with friends. I think of a fire pit that I built in the backyard because I was bored during COVID. I think of all the dumb stuff I've done in my driveway. I mean, I just think of home. But the one place that I love the most in the home is the kitchen. That's not a fat joke. But I love the kitchen. How many of you know that if something good's happening in the kitchen, it's going to be a good night? Oh, come on. Those of you that aren't raising your hands, your mamas don't know how to cook. Here's the deal. I love cooking. I love cooking. I love grilling. My dad taught me as I was growing up. He looked at me one day and he said, Mitch, you have to learn how to cook because one day you're going to have to cook for your wife. So guys, once you get into the dating world, learn how to cook. It really helps. Sorry, I thought that was like a sixth grader over there saying, I was like, you have no experience. All right. But here's the deal. I love cooking. I love grilling. But the one thing I can't do is bake. Can't do baking. I can eat the baked goods. I can do that. But I can't bake. It's not something that I'm good at. And it's not because it's girly or anything like that. It's simply because I don't want to wait. If you're baking something, you're going to have to wait a while. And I don't want to do that. My mom makes my favorite dessert in the world. How many of y'all in this room like cheesecake? Okay? So my mom makes this cheesecake where it's, instead of graham cracker on the bottom, it's brownie. Okay? So it's brownie, cheesecake, whipped cream with chocolate and caramel sauce over the top and some chocolate chips. Y'all, I don't even like chocolate, but I love that cheesecake. But the thing is I always ask my mom, hey, you should make it more. You should make it more. Because she only makes it one time a year. And that's always on my birthday. And I always try to convince her, Mom, you should make it some more. Hey, my birthday's like 8 months away, It'll still be good. We could do another round later on. And every time I ask her, she always looks at me and says, I can, but it won't be as special. And I hate it, but she's right. If I have that all the time, it's not near as special. If I can get it anytime I want, if I don't have to wait for it, it's not as special as what it could be. Everyone say, get your weight up. Tonight, I want to look in the Bible at 1 Samuel chapter 13. To give a bit of context, this is during the reign of Israel's first king, King Saul. Before then, they didn't have a king. The tribes were separated, and it was a book called Judges. And the whole point of Judges is they wouldn't have a king. They would have different leaders appointed to take care of the tribes or to take care of God's people. And so this is during the reign of the very first king, King Saul. Saul was a great king, but he was an even greater warrior. The Bible talks about how he's won countless battles, and it's all been through the blessing and the grace of God. And in chapter 13, we see that Saul is preparing to go to a great battle with the Philistines. And once again, he's found success countless times. You can truly see that God is trying to build King Saul to be one of the greatest kings of all time. But there was something about this battle that was different than all the rest. There was something about this battle that just was off. It was different. And so in verse 5 it says, the Philistines mustered a mighty army of 3,000 chariots, 6,000 charioteers, so 2 people on every chariot, and as many warriors as the grains of sand on the seashore. Was there really that many people? No. But it means that there were so many enemies, they couldn't count them. They were so vastly outnumbered, they didn't even have a number to go off of. And the Bible says that the Israelites were so scared that they would begin to hide in caves or that they would cross the Jordan River because they were scared of what they were having to go up against. And so Saul had been in many great battles, but this one looked a little bigger than the others. And in fact, while many of the soldiers left, Saul and a large group of soldiers actually stayed because he was commanded by the prophet Samuel to wait for 7 days. The whole point of a prophet is he speaks for God. God would speak to Samuel, and then Samuel would speak on his behalf. And so, in essence, God is telling Saul, wait for 7 days. At the end of the 7 days, Samuel would come back and they would do an offering to the Lord, he and Saul, and then God would bless them. And so we look in verses 8 and 9, and it says, Saul waited there 7 days for Samuel, as Samuel had instructed him. But Samuel didn't come. Saul realized that his troops were rapidly slipping away. So he demanded, bring me the burnt offering and the peace offerings. And Saul sacrificed the burnt offerings himself. Did you catch that? Saul didn't wait for 1 day and bail out. Saul didn't wait for 3 days and bail out. He waited the full 7 days. But rather than just waiting just a tad bit longer, rather than just waiting just a little bit more, he looked outside his tent and he saw, man, I'm losing people left and right. I got to get something going. He looked outside that tent and thought, oh man, this is not looking good. I don't know where Samuel is. I'm going to do it myself. And the next verse says, just as Saul finished with the burnt offerings, Samuel arrived. Terrible timing. As soon as he finished, then Samuel arrives. And it says, Saul went out to meet him, but Samuel said, what is this you have done? Saul was thinking he did what he needed to, but Samuel, he's thinking, what are you doing? Didn't you listen to me? And in fact, if you skip a few verses ahead, Samuel says, how foolish. You haven't kept the command the Lord your God gave you. Had you kept it, the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. But now your kingdom must end. For the Lord has sought a man after his own heart. The Lord has already appointed him to be the leader of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command. Y'all, God was going to make Saul and his lineage the ruler of Israel forever. That would mean that today the leader of Israel would be a descendant of King Saul. He was prepared to do that for him if he just would have waited a little longer. And you might be thinking, what's the big deal? Like, what is it? So what? Samuel told him to wait for 7 days. Once again, it wasn't Samuel saying it, it was God saying it. God told Saul, just give me 7 days. 7 days and I'll bless you. But because Saul looked outside his tent, because he saw everything around him, he began to get impatient with God. And rather than waiting just a little bit longer, he pulled the trigger too soon. And because of that one little mistake, God took his reign and everything that Saul was destined to be away. Now, don't get me wrong, God still used Saul. Saul was still a very important king. But his reign, his lineage, his fame was never all that God destined it to be. God had so much bigger plans for Saul. He was prepared to give him everything. But he just wouldn't wait. If I could have the band come up. To me, it all comes back to the kitchen. Like I said before, if my mom would have made that cake all the time, it wouldn't be as special. If I wouldn't have to wait for it, it wouldn't be as meaningful as it is. It wouldn't be all that it's cracked up to be. And we find that in the kitchen, you always have to wait for something. And oftentimes, the better the meal, the better the dessert, the less we want to wait for it. Because we know how good it is. After like 15 minutes, you start smelling the meal and it smells good. You start to get hungry. You don't want to wait. You're ready to eat. If you have a favorite dessert and you see it start to rise in the oven, you see it, you start to smell it, and you know, oh, it's nearly done. You get excited. You're ready to get after it. It's because you know how amazing it can be. But the problem is, if you don't wait, it won't be as great as what it could be. So let me tell you, God is in the kitchen of our lives, in essence. And let me tell you, God is the best cook ever. But here's the thing. Just like Saul, many of us, including me, don't get me wrong, I'm not just preaching at you guys, I do it too. But like Saul, many of us, we get too caught up on what's going on outside. We get impatient with God. We're like, okay, God, can you hurry it up? Can we get this thing moving? I got to go. And if we don't learn to get our weight up, our purpose won't be all that God has destined it to be. If we don't learn to get our weight up, we'll miss out. Some of you might be confused, so I'm going to ask you a question. In all sincerity, can I be real with you? Can I say some things that might be a little hurtful to hear? But can I be honest with you? Can I be transparent with you? Yes or no? Yes or no? Okay. Those of you that have gone to Arlington, you've seen how great and powerful God can move. You've seen it. I don't know what last year looked like. I wasn't here. But 2 years ago, I saw one of the greatest moves of God I've ever seen in my entire life. It was on the ground level of that really run-down church. And in that, I saw the Holy Spirit move in such a way that kids were speaking in tongues for the first time. Kids were praying for one another without being told to. We started singing worship to God out of nowhere. And I guarantee you, for those of you that have experienced it, even just thinking about it right now starts to spark something in your spirit. Because when you know how good God is and you've seen what He can do, it starts to hit you at your core. And just like that great dessert or that great meal in the oven, you start to smell it, you start to remember it, and you start to get excited. And here's the deal, a lot of you, you experienced it. And you come home from Arlington, you think, God is going to do something awesome. God, fill me. Give me everything you have for me. And you wonder why God doesn't move the same here as what He did in Arlington. Maybe it's not Arlington, maybe it's camp. You've seen God move in the altars at camp and you think, man, that's awesome. I'm getting excited. I'm ready to take this back home. And you get here and you say, God, give it all to me. And you wonder why here is different than there. And it's all simple. It's all simple. You wait there. You don't wait here. In Arlington, you have nothing else to do. You're not going to go hang out with friends. You're hanging out at the church. You're not going to play Xbox. You're not going to FaceTime your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. You're not focused on anything else outside the tent. You're focused on there. You're focused on the present. You have nothing else to do but to wait on God. And when you give God time, He moves into such an incredible way. Camp is the same way. A lot of you, you've experienced God, but some of you in this room, you're thinking, well, I've seen God move, but I didn't experience it at camp. And if I'm going to be real, if I'm going to be honest, can I ask you, were you praying in the altars, God, fill me? And then the moment that concession slide went up, did you leave? You started to think, man, they're going to run out of my snack, or man, I'm getting thirsty. Some of y'all, it's, man, I want to see that girl from cabin 12. I want to see that boy from cabin 4. And the moment that slide pops up, you think, all right, God, thank you. I'm gonna head out real quick. And you wonder why here is different. You come here and after Pastor Riley speaks an amazing word, maybe it hits you to your core. Maybe it's exactly what you need to hear. And you come to the altars and say, God, I'm ready for something different. God, I'm ready for you to move. Fill me. Give me all you have. But Brahms closes in like 40 minutes, so I'm going to go hang out with my friends there. God, give me all that you have for me. I want it. I'm ready for a change. I'm ready to be different. But all my friends are meeting at Freddy's, so got like 10 minutes. If you could do it in 10 minutes, can we do that? That's the equivalent of putting a cake that needs to go in the oven for an hour, pulling it out after 5 minutes and going, why is it batter? If you don't give God the time that He needs, how can you expect Him to move? And a lot of times you're sitting there thinking, man, it's getting late. I need to get going. And God's saying, if you give me 5 more minutes, it's nearly done. I promise you, your blessing's coming. 5 more minutes. But we just don't want to wait. Our impatience gets the better of us. So I want everyone in here to stand. The thing that still sticks out to me about King Saul's story is, many of us, we might have given up after a day. He waited 7. He was right there. He was so close to getting the blessing. He was so close to getting his destiny. But because he looked at what was happening outside, he got impatient. And right before he crossed the finish line, he bailed. Here's the deal. I don't know about you, but I want to see what God can do through me. I want to see what God can do through you. Imagine if you just opened yourself to God and said, God, I don't care how long it takes. I don't care what's going on. I'm yours till you meet me here. And imagine what He can do through you. Imagine how different Mustang High School would look. Imagine how different your middle school would look. Imagine how different your town or even this church would look. If we would just let Him move through us. But that requires us to wait. And if we're going to be open and honest with ourselves, a lot of us, including me, we don't want to wait. We don't want to. It's hard. It's difficult. We don't want to. But I guarantee you, I've seen it. I wish I could show you guys again. I've seen it. If you wait, it's like nothing that you've ever experienced. If you wait, it will radically change you for the rest of your life. But you just have to wait.